When the Eldar Empire was at its absolute peak, they had nothing to fear. With such complete domination over everything, the Eldar were allowed to indulge themselves in whatever they really wanted to. And with lifespans as long as the Eldar, eventually this led to some experimentation. Sensation and emotion stopped being meaningful when you have a lifespan so long. And so they started to indulge in different sensation, which very often meant torture, murder, and other unsavory practices on each other races, and themselves. The Drukhari represent this side of the Eldar Empire. After the birth of Slaanesh, craft worlds all disappeared into the void, the Exodites already had their planets, the Drukhari fled into the Webway and built themselves a new city there. Whilst the Drukhari were hiding in the Webway, because of reasons, Slaanesh is now slowly eating all of their souls, and to replenish themselves, they have to feast on the pain and suffering of others. Think of the Drukhari like a sponge. Slaanesh is a giant lamp that's slowly drying them out and making them wither away. But by absorbing the pain of others, which in the analogy I guess is just water, they're able to keep themselves topped up and prevent themselves from drying out and turning into husks. Whilst the huge amount of the Eldar Empire was remorseful over what they'd done and regretted their actions, the Drukhari straight up didn't. These guys are completely remorseless, completely self-centered, and have absolutely zero plans to ever give up the torture, murder, and other unsavory actions that they did to each other and to other races across the galaxy. To put it plainly, when you look at all of the factions in 40k, because of their motivations and what they do, Drukhari are probably the single most evil faction in the entire setting. Now within Comora, Drukhari hierarchy is kind of split across 3 sub-factions. We have the Cabal households, who are essentially pirate warlords competing against each other for wealth, recognition, and power. Then we have the witch cults. The witches are performers. Whilst witches do head out into real space to raid and pillage lesser races' planets just like the Cabal do, they also serve to entertain. Witches will fight in giant arenas packed out with Drukhari citizens. They will fight monsters, captured creatures from other races, and each other for the entertainment of the audience. And by entertainment, we also, in this case, mean for dinner, as the audience watching will be able to feed on the pain and suffering of those unfortunate enough to have to face the witches in the arena. The homunculus covens are the crazy scientists of the Drukhari. They do absolutely insane work with body modification for high-paying clients. This is how we get entities like scourges. They will keep DNA or body parts of high-paying patrons, and if these patrons are to fall in battle, homunculi are able to grow them back to life from the parts that they left in the homunculus's care. The covens break down flesh of lesser races or other Drukhari who were unfortunate enough to cross their path and remold them into racks, grotesques, and pain engines. These serve as the homunculi's army, and sometimes they will also take to war alongside the cabal houses or witch cults. The homunculi are also exquisite torturers. Let's talk about characters, because these are often the centerpieces of our armies, and since there is lore built up around them, they're the guys that we most get attached to when we're looking at an army. So our main leaders are Archons. Archons are the rulers of Cabal households within Comora, and they're constantly competing with each other for power. At the moment, we don't have rules for any named Archons, but we do know of quite a few in the lore. We have the top dog Vect, who is the Archon of the Black Heart. Blackheart is the most influential and powerful Cabal within Comora, and whilst there have been plenty of plots to have him killed or dethroned, Vect is a master of 4D chess, so this is never going to happen. We have Lady Malice, Archon of the Poison Tongue, another very influential Cabal within Comora. She's got some really cool lore that ties her to Chigorak, and I hope she gets some new lore and maybe a model soon. We have Cruella, or Cruella, I do not know how you pronounce it. She took a backseat by the time I got to 40k, and she was not in the 5th edition Dark Eldar Codex, but she did have a model quite a long time ago, and she is still canonically the Archon of the Flayed Skull Cabal. Finally, we also have Duke Sliscus. Sliscus was a badass. I remember reading about him in the 5th edition Codex. He might not technically be an Archon, but it's the closest thing in the Codex to kind of put him as. He's kind of a Corsair. He was a character for the Dark Eldar, but living the pirateer Corsair lifestyle. And his armada of boats is absolutely huge. Moving on to witches. At the moment, we only have succubi to put on the table with witches. A succubus is the head of a witch cult. So just like Archons, there are an untold number of succubi leading different witch cults all over the place, which gives you a lot of freedom to come up with your own characters, your own backstories, and just have a bit of fun with it. However, the ultimate succubus is Lelith Hesperax. Lelith is an absolute monster of a fighter, an incredible duelist who's apparently in lore never been so much as scratched by an opponent's blade. She's the succubus of the Cult of Strife, which is the colour scheme you'll see on any box of minis that are witches, and she is seriously cool. He never got a model, but in the 5th Ed Codex we also had Baron Sathanix. Sathanix was essentially a Hellion prince. He rode around on the cool Green Goblin hoverboards, and he had some really cool artwork. I remember liking his character very much. Onto the third main sect of the covens, we have the homunculi. I don't know if it's ever kind of stated in lore that there is one homunculus that leads each coven, or if multiple homunculi will work together within covens. But the homunculi do lead the covens, and potentially the most notorious is Urian Rakath. Urian leads the Prophets of Flesh coven, and if you want to pay him for any of his services, he will cost you a fortune. Finally, we have 2 more characters who represent different Blade for Hire units. So something I didn't really cover in the lore section is that existing outside of the Cabals, the Covens, and the Cults, we also have various mercenaries that work within Comora. Most notably, the Incubi, the Scourges, and the Mandrakes. The Incubi are essentially a dark mirror of the Striking Scorpions Aspect Warriors. And just like the Aspect Warriors, they have what is essentially their own Phoenix Lord, Drukhari, the Master of Blades. Drukhari is an absolute monster and one of my favorite miniatures that Games Workshop have ever created. I remember reading about this guy when I was young, thinking he was just so cool, and desperately wishing for them to update his model. And when they finally got round to it, it went hard. We also have Karajuak the Decapitator. This guy's a Mandrake character. He kind of has his own sinister goals, and no one is exactly sure what he's doing. But he kind of shadow steps behind people, decapitates them, and takes their skull back to his lair to be a creepy little weirdo. It's time to talk aesthetic. Think Treasure Planet, but if all of the pirates were really tall, thin, kind of attractive, but also equally off-putting to look at because they just have that uncanny, unnerving look about them. A lot of people will describe Dark Eldar as BDSM elves in space. And there's some truth to this, but it does mostly apply to witches. Witches wear the sort of latex-looking bodysuits with maybe a little bit of plate armor on top, whereas Cabal will wear armor that looks a lot more like evil fantasy armor. It's super spiky, there's lots of layers of plate overlapping each other, and it's very sinister and threatening. The Coven aesthetic is like Frankenstein-esque body horror abomination. And this is one of the things that I simply adore about Drukhari. You get 3 reasonably different aesthetics that are all evil in kind of different ways. But essentially, when we talk about Drukhari aesthetic, think about vampire pirates in BDSM gear with friends who look like Frankenstein's monster, absolutely loaded up with ridiculous guns and knives covered in poison that you really don't want to get touched by. I'm not going to talk about out of production models, but I'm going to throw up some models on the screen that are available now that make up the current range. I think that the age to looks ratio for the Drukhari range is possibly one of the best. A massive amount of this range came out in 2010, 14 years ago, but it still looks so good. I think that the style of the models has really stood the test of time, and to be honest, there's a lot of models that I don't think are going to get updated for quite a while. The army has had a bit of an issue with Finecast. There was a good portion of Finecast models from that 2010 update. These guys came out in Finecast and have all been discontinued, so there are some models that you simply can't get your hands on at the moment, but are available within the codex and available to play in the game. For the time being, you would just have to either go to a third-party site that makes equivalent models or kit bash your own out of something else. Thankfully, Games Workshop are slowly getting around to sorting out this problem. They refreshed the Finecast Incubi in 8th edition and made them plastic, and they are some of the best models. I can't tell you how much I love Incubi. So Incubi and Drukhari were refreshed in 8th edition. They refreshed Lelith's model in 9th edition. Most recently in 10th edition, we've had the Hand of the Archon Kill Team, which is just an upgrade pack for the Cabal Warriors, which further cements my belief that this unit will not get any new model updates for quite a while. And hopefully up for pre-order any week now, we have the new Mandrake Kill Team as well, which it's such a glow up. It's such a ridiculous glow up. If they can keep going like this with the remaining units that we still need in the codex, I will be so happy. Hopefully by the time we get a codex coming out for 10th edition, we will also have Grotesques and Beastmasters released alongside those. That would be wonderful. But on the whole, I think that the aesthetic has really stood the test of time. I think that as Games Workshop make more intricate models, they're only going to get better. Talking about playstyle, maybe one of the fastest armies in the entire game. They are fast movers, made up of very cheap units, which lets them play objectives really, really well. They're a glass cannon army, so they hit hard, but they are not tough. If you like high risk, high reward kind of playstyles, Drukhari are really going to be your cup of tea because they exemplify high risk, high reward to me. They are an army that quite often has to work on trading units out. You might simply just have to send a unit or two into the meat grinder knowing they're going to die, purely so that you can, in your next turn, react to what's happened, keep scoring points and keep crushing enemy units. So you can't play Drukhari and not expect to lose a lot of units by the end of the game. At time of recording, we don't have a codex. We have their army rule, and we have 2 detachment rules. Their army rule is power from pain. Depending on the size of the game, you get pain tokens allotted to you at the start of the match, and every time your opponent fails battle shock or you destroy an enemy unit, you get another pain token. Pain tokens allow you to do a series of things. You empower your unit in the advance or charge phase to reroll the advance or the charge, or you empower them in the shooting and fighting phase, which gives them reroll hits for that phase. This is a fantastic damage buff. You pretty much never use pain tokens to reroll your advance or charge because it just isn't very efficient to do so. But the damage boosts that you can get out of rerolling hits, especially in shooting, is undeniably good. In terms of detachments, we do not talk about Real Space Raiders. I'm sorry, if you want to learn about Real Space Raiders, you can do that elsewhere. We effectively have one detachment, and it's the Sky Splinter detachment. More seriously, the Real Space Raider detachment, it has a couple of strats that are quite fun. Its rule is not very good. It just gives you extra pain tokens, but on the basis that you have to take certain characters to get them. And since you can farm pain tokens throughout the game in different ways, it just isn't a good detachment rule. The Sky Splinter detachment revolves massively around transports. You get bonuses every time you disembark. So if you disembark from a transport, your ranged weapons get ignore cover, and your melee weapons get lance, which is a massive deal because our melee before the lance was made an option, was nerfed like crazy from 9th edition. We were very good in combat in 9th. We were terrible in combat at the start of 10th. Sky Splinter gives us that option back. We can punch up against opponents now, and you would never ever play Real Space Raiders. Promise me, type in the comments right now. Type in the comments right now. Say, I promise I will never play Real Space Raiders. Thank you. The strats and enhancements are all super fun, super fluffy. Again, they all revolve around transports for the most part. And I've played with this detachment once or twice now since it came out. There is no detachment currently in the game that makes your army feel how they should feel like Sky Splinter. I'm not saying it makes them super, super strong. It does make them strong. It doesn't make them OP. But to me, the most important thing is it makes them feel and play how they should. Fast moving, reliant on transports for durability boosts and moving around the table, lots of quick hit and run kind of strikes. It's just, it's perfect to me. It's so good. The final thing we're going to talk about is discount boxes. Again, at the time of recording, our current combat patrol is probably the best. I mean, I'm biased as hell, but it's probably the best combat patrol you can buy. You get 10 Cabal Warriors, an Archon to lead them, you get 5 Incubi, a Raider and a Ravager. You need a lot of vehicles to play Drukhari, and if you wanted to get a full 2,000 point army, it would be very wise to get 2 of this combat patrol. It wouldn't even be a bad idea to get 3 of this combat patrol. You are saving so much value. You are picking up Incubi, which are fantastic, Archons, which are fantastic, Raiders, which are pretty much a must pick in the Sky Splinter detachment, a Ravager, which you could run as a Raider if you didn't want the extra firepower, and Cabal Warriors, which are fantastic troops with a lot of weapon options. This box is ridiculous, and I'm sure they're going to replace it when we get our 10th edition codex. It's going to be a very sad day for everybody. I'm sorry if you're watching this after the new Combat Patrol comes out and you didn't get a chance. If you can find it anywhere online or in your local game store, this is the box to start Drukhari with and to really get a feel for if you enjoy painting and building the army as well. Other than that, there have been some boxes in the past couple of years which have been pretty good and pretty worth picking up. The old Start Collecting, if you can find that anywhere, is a nice little starter for a witch army. The Boarding Patrol, I think, is okay. I don't think it's fantastic, but again, witches and incubi, it's a good way to save a little bit of money if you want those units. Harder to find, I think, would be the old Battle Force, which my partner bought for me when I got back into Warhammer. It was a fantastic value box with a lot of stuff in it and really kickstarted me in the right direction for Drukhari. On top of those, we also have Piety and Pain, which is a box that's split with Sisters of Battle, and Blood of the Phoenix, which is a box that's split with Craft Worlds. So if you've any interest in those two armies, it could be worth trying to find one of these so that you can get them both at the same time. Or if you've got a friend who's interested, you could potentially split that box with the friend. If neither of those apply, you could potentially buy the box and sell the other half online to get a little bit of your money back. But if you don't have much time to look around for these options, just buy the Combat Patrol. Even from Games Workshop, it's such a steal. If you buy it third party from a store that offers a discount, even better. This is the way to start Drukhari, and I would be amazed if the updated one, when we get our codex, is even half as good. That's all I'd planned to really cover in this video. If you've got questions for me, I can talk about Drukhari all day. Throw them in the comments, I will reply to everybody. If you're a Drukhari fan yourself and you think I've missed anything, throw it in the comments, let the people know. And if I think of anything else, I will have a pinned comment at the top of the comment section with additional information if I think of anything else. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like. It helps me know that you enjoyed this style of content and I can potentially make more of these for other armies. That would be really cool. If you liked it enough to like it because of what I just said, tell me what army you'd want to see next. Some armies I know far, far better than others, but I will do my best to eventually get round to all of them in this format. Thanks for watching. I hope you have a fantastic day wherever you are, and I'll catch you next time.